Welcome, I'm Tommy the Keyblade Master, and today I'm going to be doing a Super Mario Bros. Look Back retrospective PowerPoint presentation, and for those booing in the audience, get over it, as well as a review of the actual game itself. So sit back, we'll start with a history lesson. You all know that Super Mario Bros. Brought back the industry after E.T. killed it. Well, actually wrong in so many ways. So what killed Atari in the end? It was actually bad management. Bad management at Atari just didn't mean the Pac-Man and E.T. snafus that ultimately did end the company. What really, in my opinion, led to their destruction happened several years earlier when a bunch of their employees went to their new boss after Nolan Bushnell sold the company and asked for credit for their games. They were thrown out and they went to form Activision. Now, Activision made some best games for the Atari 2600, but just by being there, they made the Atari 2600 an open platform. That meant anybody could make games. You had Alpo games, you had Kool-Aid games, you even had pornography games. And Atari could not control it, nor did they see a dime of revenue from these games. And as far as the porn games go, no, I'm not going to touch them. There's a disgruntled nerd that does game reviews. You could say he's angry and he's done one on these. I'm not going to touch them. In the end, despite its reputation as the world's worst video game, E.T. really isn't that bad of a game. I used to play it as a kid. I remember it wasn't like super uber great, but it wasn't the worst game even for the Atari. I remember things like Fun with Numbers being worse and less fun than E.T. Modern games like Sonic 6, I say, are less quality than E.T. What E.T. was more the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't that it was such a terrible game, but there was just such a terrible quantity made. All those things dug up in the New Mexico landfill, that was because they simply made too many of them. That's what E.T.'s problem was. Not quality of game, just too many for a game that was low quality. Meanwhile, a Japanese company that Atari tried to screw over by having them sign over their rights to an American launch. Atari would sell the Japanese company game system, while this made sure that Atari wouldn't have to worry about competition. If their next system flopped, they'd move on to the Japanese company's games. Anyways, this company saw that with Atari gone, they could move in and publish the system themselves and be successful. So what did they do? They did a gutsy push into toy stores. They made their console a side-loading entertainment system, which would later be a bane to all gamers who purchased it. And they saw they could sell it if they bundle it with the biggest game ever made at the time. And that was, of course, Super Mario Bros. The company I'm talking about is Nintendo. So what's the lesson in all this? Basically, E.T. did not kill the game industry, nor did Super Mario Bros. Bring it back. Rather, it was good and bad management from both sides of the spectrum that helped bring the game industry back after it collapsed. I said, real interesting history. A great book is The Ultimate History of Video Games. If you're a gamer and you haven't read it, you're missing out. Definitely go look for that. Well, let's get on to the review. I'll say this again. Super Mario Bros. Changed the way games were played. No longer were they single-screen attractions with oftentimes rather strange-looking, cube-looking characters. For once, we had a full world that could scroll. You had a character that looked and was animated like a human. A very cartoon human, but a human nonetheless. It was set in an Alice in Wonderland type environment, and we loved it. The story of the game is pretty simple. Stop me if you heard this one, but Bowser kidnaps Princess Toadstool. Although there's a few darker elements here. Mainly what happens when Mario smashes those blocks, because in the original game's instruction booklet it says the Mushroom Kingdom's people have been turned into floating blocks. Mario, the mass murderer! Whatever side of the argument you run on, Super Mario Brothers is still a fun game. Personally, I think those blocks are just blocks. You run into them on games where you run into plenty of toads, so that's just some anomaly in the storybook to me. The graphics are 30 years old, and yes, they don't look new, but at the same time, just like some really old antique that's worth a lot of money, the graphics have a lot of charm. Like I said, a lot of the sprites have sharp edges nowadays, especially when zoomed. However, usually when you see 8-bit artwork, it's oftentimes molded around the classic Mario series for a reason. There's just a certain amount of charm that you just can't update. It looks this good because it's this old looking. And Nintendo did try one. Once in 1993, they released a game called Super Mario All-Stars, which had a pack-in of Super Mario Brothers, both the Japanese and American versions of Super Mario Brothers 2 and Super Mario Brothers 3, and gave them all 16-bit updates. And while Super Mario Brothers remake was definitely well done, as you can see here, it does look good. It just does not have the timeless charm in the 16-bit state as it does in the 8-bit state. It's just one of those odd things. While definitely shinier, the older one has more charm, I guess. As for sound, all I have to say is listen to this. Theme in Super Mario Brothers is a classic among a lot of gamers. There's a few other tracks, including an underground theme, an underwater theme, which are also pretty memorable. The only track that really doesn't sound as good is Bowser's Castle theme. What can I say about the gameplay in this game, other than it's a real classic game? It's pretty simple. You move from left to right, stomping on Goombas and hitting turtle shells, trying to reach the goalpost. Super Mario Brothers really unique was there was a whole bunch of hidden pathways. You could warp down tubes for bonus rooms, or even warp zones that let you skip over entire levels. Part of the fun with Super Mario Brothers is the unique power-ups you could grab while playing. A mushroom would allow Mario to grow several times larger than his enemies and his surroundings. This is based off the Alice in Wonderland inspiration its game's creator had. Grabbing a fire flower would allow Mario to throw fireballs, killing any enemy that was in front of him. Despite the fact that there are some speedruns that have clocked in less than 5 minutes, Super Mario Brothers is still a really hard game for people the first time through. World 8-1 was a stopping point for me for several years on account that it just lasts forever and there are no power-ups. And unlike modern Nintendo games, kiddies, there is no super guide. Luigi isn't going to save you this time. Fucking cheating virtual In the end, Super Mario Brothers is a great game and it's not hard to find. It is available on the NES. The most common cartridge is Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. It's available on the Super Nintendo with a 16-bit remake in Super Mario All-Stars. It's available in the GameCube Nintendo game Animal Crossing. However, you will need a cheat device in the North American version in order to unlock it. On the Game Boy Color, it was available for the Super Mario Bros. DX. Now, this is my least favorite version of it because the screen is really zoomed in to fit the Game Boy Color small screen. It does, however, have a lot of cool extras, so I do recommend at least checking it out. It was available on the Game Boy Advance through the Nintendo's Classic NES series re-releases. And then finally it's on the Wii and Wii U through the Virtual Console, as well as the 3DS through its Virtual Consoles. They're each $5. Now the 3DS and the Wii do not have a cross-buy program, so if you buy on one, you're going to have to buy on the other for full price. So you pick which one you want. I personally prefer the console. I give Super Mario Brothers a 5 out of 5. It's worth checking out on the Virtual Console or any way you can get it. After all, the whole point of Mario Brothers is to beat Bowser and rescue the princess. Hey, who the heck are you?